Matter of fact, they ordered me to stop doing whatever I was doing, but they didn't know what I was doing.
They couldn't get you to stop.
Yeah. So what they did is they transferred me to a Spanish-speaking unit.
So you couldn't speak to them.
So I couldn't speak to these guys, and I tried. I mean, my Spanish, I mean, I know enough to get by, but not enough to really do therapy with. And then that's where I got into trouble again, where one of the inmates told one of the psychologists that was watching me what he experienced while he was in there. You know, and a lot of these times I could, you know, I slip by going, hey, that guy's crazy. Are you going to believe him or me? You know, who are you going to believe? But by this time, that chief psychologist was looking for something to hang me. So, you know, I hit
one of the things I get again and again, because I've only really started talking about my schizophrenia, or my period of schizophrenia, nearly 30 years ago, in the last 7 or 8 years. And what I've got time and again is it must have been a misdiagnosis, because you don't get well from schizophrenia. And
that's bull crap. That's bull crap. That's what they want you to believe. There is no other treatment except these expensive friggin' drugs that rot out your nervous system. That's all there is. You need to understand that. If you want anything done, you have to take these poisonous pills.
Yeah. Or they say something like, it must have been a very mild form, or maybe you had a misdiagnosis, or maybe, you know, you weren't fully schizophrenic, or maybe you still are. You know, some people say, well, you still are. And I think, well, maybe I am. Maybe I am. Because, like, you know, I mean, I have such an open mind now. I don't dismiss anything. I wait and I sit and I park everything. The most bizarre conspiracy theory. I don't say,
so do I. So do I.
Yeah, you
it's
have
like, okay, I've seen this. I know I saw it, and I'll remember it.
Yeah.
And then something else comes in.
That's it.
There it is again. But with the schizophrenics, what I'd have is one would tell me something about the voices that I hadn't known before. I never went on just one guy's word for anything.
Yes.
Like you said, I'd park it.
Yeah.
And then when the next guy come in, I'd ask him, I go, well, what about this? I had one guy tell me about this. Have you ever had those experiences? What do you know about this? And bam, 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 bam. Here's the other one saying the same thing. You know, but they're not being listened to.
And of course, if you listen to the conversation that you and I are having about the jinn and the archons and the demonic attachments and entities and everything, to your average person, this is absolutely psychotic.
Yes.
This isn't real.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking La La Land.
The only reason I can speak out like I am now, I wouldn't dare. I did it with Robert Stanley. You know, he kind of found me while I was still working in the prison, and he wanted to do an interview with me. And I said, well, okay, I'll do that, but you've got to come up with some alias for me. I can't go on as myself, because if they find out at the prison, I'll be in a lot of trouble. You know? So he came up with Dr. J. And you know, I'm not a doctor. I got 2 years in a PhD program, but that's spread all over the place. And I told him 3 or 4 times, Robert, I'm not a doctor. You got to stop this. And he goes, well, that's just your screen name. And I said, but well, people think I'm a doctor. If I was a doctor, I'd be just like them.
Yeah.
And I could feel them programming me that way when I was in the PhD program. They didn't want me to think the way I think. They wanted me to think the way they think. And they wanted to check that out to make sure I was thinking. So they were changing. They were changing, or trying to change how I thought and what I saw. And had I not had those 7 years at the state hospital prior to getting in there, I would have been as brainwashed as the rest of them. I would have went out there, oh yeah, these are hallucinations, and this is the way it is.
That's a strong word, because the vast majority of people believe what doctors tell them. But the vast majority of people believe that the doctors know better than them, that they can trust their mind and their soul and their heart and their body to the doctors, because the doctors know best.
Exactly, and that's exactly what happened. So when you start working with this population of schizophrenics, you'll see 3 distinct levels appear. You'll have the schizophrenics who are taking their medicines. They believe what the doctors have told them. This is a chemical imbalance. There is no cure. The only thing they can do is take these medicines, and they're sick, and something is wrong. They got a chemical imbalance in their brain, and this is the only thing that can be done. And the voices are hallucinations. You know, they believe that. Those are the guys that are going to die on those meds because they believe this horse crap. They're going to keep taking those meds until their central nervous system is rotted out and they develop Parkinsonians and EPS and the schizophrenic shuffle. Then you got the group in the middle who are not quite sure what the voices are. They don't quite believe they're hallucinations, but they don't quite believe that they're entities either. You can reach those guys, especially if they're on meds. You can talk to them, but it takes a lot longer. The ones who are going to recover the fastest are the ones who have come to the conclusion on their own that these voices are entities who are different from them, that the intent of these voices is not their intent. Those guys are a little bit easier to pull over because you can go, well, you know, you listened to the voices in the past and now they got you in prison. Was it your intent to be thrown in prison? And they'd go, no, that wasn't my intention. Well, then whose was it? If it wasn't yours. You know, these voices have been telling you all along to do these things that got you here. Whose intention was it that you ended up here?
Intriguing, isn't it? I mean,
and that goes with tracking down the thoughts too, because a lot of times schizophrenics have a hard time. These things invade their mind. So basically what happens is they give these people their mind. So you have two minds meshed. You have the mind of the person, and then you have the mind of the schizophrenic. And the thoughts that appear, they have a hard time ferreting out. Is that thought belong to me, who I was, or is that a thought of the voices? You know, and the voices sound, in a lot of cases, sound just like their own thoughts. So the only way you can ferret those out is, what was the intent of that thought? When a negative thought comes in and they see it and it's saying, this guy's insulting you and you need to beat him up, you know, what is the intent of that thought? You know, and then you see that there's two different intentions at work. Here's the intent of the patient who wants to get rid of these things and wants to feel better, and here's the intent of these other thoughts that are coming into his head that are just the opposite. Yeah. So it all centers around thought and thinking and the realization that, and Manuel Swedenborg said, no thought that comes into your head belongs to you. In which case, what that means is there's entities around me, because I don't know what I'm going to say next. This information is just flowing through me. You know?
Which makes us, the human form or condition, is like a transceiver, a receiver.
Yes.
It receives. It kind of plugs into the universal consciousness, and it receives uploads and downloads from
whatever channel you're on.
Whatever channel you happen to be on.
At whatever frequency you happen to be on. So, you know, schizophrenics, their frequency is, you know, 0.01, very low frequency. So they attract that. And what's really interesting is that I've been talking to one guy who has sent me a bunch of information on these spirit boxes and these spirit voice recorder things.
Yep. I know
what they're doing is they're attempting to tune into that frequency where they can hear these things, these ghosts, these voices. And a number of them are going psychotic. The voices go, and they start hearing them. They hear them on the recorder, then they hear them outside, then they hear them inside their head, and they're as psychotic as any of the others. You know? Because
they've changed their vibrational frequency to align themselves with that frequency.
With that, and not only that, it's like what you're seeking is seeking you. So they're looking for these things, and these things know they're looking for them, that they come up and meet them, and then they take over. You know? So
we have this concept in Buddhism that's been taken up by The Secret, you know, the law of attraction. But in Buddhism, we have this law of cause and effect, and whatever causes you're putting out, you're going to get the effects. It's absolutely inescapable. So whatever causes you put out into the universe, you're going to get the effects back. So if you start studying like yourself, if you're kind of trying to work with schizophrenics and you're aligning yourself with that vibrational frequency in order to be able to work with them, then they're going to be sticking to you too.
Well, and they, there's periods of time where they have, but what scared me, other than that crackling that time, what scared me the most is while I was working with the schizophrenics in the prison, after each one fully recovered, and what comes to mind is one where he said the voices screamed and then disappeared, and then he heard silence. And he was totally disoriented. He couldn't stand up. He's just like somebody hit him over the head with a baseball bat, and he's just sitting there. He just almost fell out of the chair. And they were gone. But that night, at 3 a.m, I woke up and something was crushing me into the bed. I could feel it. I was being crushed, but I couldn't see anything. I couldn't hear anything, but I was definitely being crushed into the bed. And this happened almost every time that a schizophrenic recovered. The next night, so it's almost like they knew where to find me, and I would just get crushed. I mean, I could just feel it. Something was pushing into the bed or trying to break through and getting to me. And I was like, that scared the hell out of me. And it was absolutely terrifying, because it was like, I thought that they only lived in the head of the schizophrenic. And they found me, and I'm like 25 miles away from where the prison is.
Did you develop a kind of a new spirituality? Did you develop techniques or concepts of how to protect yourself?
Well, I always was a very spiritual person. I never went into that prison without praying for help and assistance and protection. Same thing when in the emergency rooms. I never went in there without praying for help and assistance. And the times I forgot to do that, I paid.
Wow, really?
I paid, yeah. So yeah, it was a realization that that there are two sides. It's almost like the angel and the devil comic books, where you have an angel whispering in your ears and a devil whispering in your ears, and whichever you listen to more is the one that's going to, because every time you give your attention to these things, whatever you're giving your attention to, you're also giving it your energy. So if you're concentrating on listening to EVPs, you're giving whatever these entities are your energy, and they go, oh man, here's a feeding source. Look at